Hey, everybody, good to see you. Summer's here, and we're ready to kind of dive in the deep end. That was always my goal when I was a kid. I want to jump in the deep end, and until I did, and then I didn't want to do it anymore. I grew up in Lincoln, and they had this woods pool that had 3 levels of Olympic platforms, and they would let little kids go up there without any supervision. Our parents would just drop us off and we could go up to that 3rd level. And I remember standing up there. I mean, I was so scared, but there were people who were behind me and also my friends who were, jump. I'm like, okay. And I did it one time, and I was pretty excited about that. Beginning of the year, we started a message series on the book of Romans, and we spent 16 weeks there. And it was a long series, right? It was like, and it was a lot of heavy lifting. There was a lot of stuff in there that we dealt with, and like, just as soon not deal with that one. And as a result of some of that stuff and the teachings we did, like, some people got frustrated and mad and left because it's some heavy-duty topic things, and they didn't like it. And so others, though, gravitated towards the incredible love of Jesus. We had over 50 people baptized during that series alone. And so that book of, and that's a great, like, okay. And we didn't anticipate that. We thought, okay. And it was a lot. Let me just say it was a lot. And if you read the book of Romans, you go, oh my. It's one of the greatest books ever written, letters written to a church in Rome. There were probably 3, maybe up to 6 house churches in Rome. And so this letter would have been read at every one of those. And my guess is lots of hands were going up. Like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? Can we spend some more time there? And, it's quite possible, like, actually, no, we do a chapter a week and that's it. No, probably not, but you know the deal. And so when we got to Romans chapter 12, I thought, there is so much here that we are just glossing over, that we're not even really, we're like, I hope you guys read it kind of stuff. So I decided, hey, let's just try a deep dive into Romans chapter 12. And Romans chapter 12 has all these little sayings on how to live out the Christian life. And we're going to take one little bite at a time, one little spot at a time, and do that. Now, I'm not a deep diving person. You just heard that, right? I can swim, and if I have to, I could probably make it all the way from the diving area over to the shore, or like climb the ladder and do the thing. But I really don't like to swim. I never have really liked to swim. It's okay, but Linda and I went snorkeling one time in Cozumel. And we were there, like, hey, this sounds like fun. We'll do that. And we weren't scuba diving. We were just snorkeling. And the training for snorkeling is put this on, basically. What? Okay. So you put it on and you get in there, and then you're supposed to stick your head in the water and breathe through a tube. And it doesn't work. I don't know how much water I drank there, but it was enough to, and the waves were bigger that day. There was red flags out, like, oh, don't go. But we did. And, we had to get a boat to go to the place where we were, and the boat's like, and I'm like, okay. And I thought, once I get in the water, it'll be way better. Actually, it was just me doing this. Up and down. And then you stick your head in there and like, Well, I'm a flatlander. I don't even like to take turns in the car. I just go straight, right? Just go straight. They have these people on your expedition that have fish food of some kind. And their goal is to swim over by you and chuck out the fish food, and these really pretty little fish come swimming by you. And you can take pictures, and it's just lovely, and they take a picture of you, and so they can sell it to you, that kind of thing, right? So that's kind of deal. But after a while of doing this and drinking salt water, I didn't need those little fish feeding people anymore. Some of you now, yeah, I was the fish feeding person. And I felt so much better after I fed the fish, but it was just a rough go. So I'm not a big deep diving person. Bless your hearts if you do that. I think that's great. But probably need to say is that during the summer here, as a deep dive into this, some of this stuff is like, okay, but some of it's a little bit more, like, okay, we're going to figure this stuff out together. And it may be kind of rough seas a little bit, and it might be really lovely, but at the same time, there's going to be some times when it's going, okay, right? And so just hang with us in there. And today, we're going to look at Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2 to kind of set things up. So, dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice. So we did talk about that back in the Romans series, that we're to live a life of sacrifice. Unfortunately for us, we're a living sacrifice, and there's a reason why they kill the sacrifice before they put it on the altar. Because once you're on, like, if you're alive and they put you on the altar, what are you going to do? Get out of there. Like, I'm not staying for that. It's just getting hot, and this is not fun. And so living sacrifices, when it starts getting hot, we tend to get off the altar. We don't mind for a little while, but we're getting cooked here. So we are living sacrifices, the kind that he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. So the way we worship God is through sacrifice. And then he kind of gives us a little picture of what that looks like. Don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world. Gosh, we sure like to do that. It doesn't take much for us to go this way. If this is the latest fad, and this is the latest thing, and this is the latest trend, and we just start copying the behaviors of this world. And you probably did. Like when you grew up, some of you wore one glove because Michael Jackson did. You did that, right? That seemed dumb, right? But it's not really, because you were like Michael Jackson. Like we wear stuff and do stuff and think stuff the way, our celebrities and people and our friends, and we start copying the behaviors of the world. So he says, don't do that. But here's what we do allow is let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. And the Roman Christian people were like, they didn't know a life like this. They didn't know a life like this at all. And so Paul is asking them to come drastically change their life. Then you will learn to know God's will. Some of us struggle with that, which is good and pleasing and perfect. This section is about worship and giving ourselves over to God. I think sometimes we get a little bit, confused or whatever. It's like, because we'll say stuff like, come to worship, or we're worshiping together. And that kind of implies that happens in this room exclusively. Like we never say, come to worship at my office. And yet, where does worship take place for most of us? In the marketplace. I worship God by how I work. I worship God with my body when I'm dating. I'm worshiping God all kinds of other places besides just here. So we don't leave our worship here because God doesn't stay here. I do think it's lovely for us to sing together and to raise our hands and to enjoy worship together. But don't get the idea that like, well, I did my worship thing, got my worship on. Boy, you better take it with you. You better take it with you, because out there, we get conformed to the patterns of this world. It gets molded into that stuff. So, Paul is letting us know the Christian life is a life of sacrifice. Now, to be clear, I don't think it's a life where we all like, okay, I'm going to live a life that is basically a vow of silence, right? That's one of the sacraments, a vow of silence. Though I do insist on that when my grandkids get in the car. Y'all going to get religion right now. You're all going to take a vow of silence. Grandpa, put on Chicken Banana. Anybody know Chicken Banana song? It's just like, oh my. No, we're not listening to that. And not one more Forrest Frank song. I don't even care if you like it. Now, I love Forrest Frank, and now in my car I have a little cymbal, boom, 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 I hit all the time, and it makes traveling with the grandkids So much more fun. One of the things we can do is to trim our lives of excess. A sacrificial life looks like that. It could be food or entertainment, recreation, or fun stuff. If worship is physical, then our bodies need to be treated as such, as a vessel of holiness, not self-indulgence. Romans chapter 12, verse 9, this is where we pick up the little tidbits of practical things to do in our faith. Here it is. This is where we start. Romans 12, 9. Love must be sincere. And now we're going to talk about next week, hate what is evil and cling to what is good stuff. We'll get there. But today, love must be sincere, which to me implies that there are times when love is not. There are times when love is not sincere. And the Greeks and the Romans would have known that love. The Greeks had 4 different words for love. Eros, which we know as sexual desire, romance, passion. We might call that Hollywood love, right? Most of the songs that are written about love fall into this category. And we sing about love all the time. We read about love and we watch movies about love. I watched a Hallmark movie last night in preparation for this. And it is bad when, like, we only have one TV, so it's like, well, what do you want to watch? And the only option was hockey for me. And I'm not an anti-hockey person, but I don't know who's playing. I didn't know any of that stuff. So we ended up watching a girl go to Greece and fall in love with a guy that she had met 20 years ago, that her aunt had given them both a part of the house, and they have to get married, and they do, but then they fall in love, and then she stays. And works remotely. It was just like, that's so great. Eros love, Philia love, or Philadelphia love, right? Philadelphia freedom love, right? This is it, which means brotherly love. That's where we get, when you talk about Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, that's where this comes from. I'm not so sure that that's true anymore after watching their football and stuff. It's like, I don't know. Philadelphia is known for throwing snowballs at Santa during a football game. So you got to be careful with that. But this is brotherly love, which is a love of trust and loyalty. And by the way, it's good ingredients. Those are good ingredients to have in love. Storge, which is a family love, which is parents nurturing and caring and providing a safe place for their children. And then there's agape love, which is the kind of love that is unconditional love, a love that goes beyond normal kind of stuff. And it's the love, agape love is the love that God has for people. And for us to fall into this agape love, that's a radical way of thinking. When I'm looking out for your best interest and you're looking out for mine, that's agape love. And that's why it's different than any other love. Most of the loves is kind of like, well, what can I get out of this? Rather than what can I give to this? And agape is used in this passage when it says love must be sincere. I want to tell you a little bit of a story that I think kind of illustrates this really well. And it's an obscure story in the Old Testament. And it's a story about a prophet, the prophet of God, Hosea, and his wife, Gomer. And I think that's an unfortunate name. But when Hosea saw Gomer, he said, Shazam! No, thank you. This is the best day ever. So Hosea and Gomer get married, but it's a rough go, and it's a rocky start. And Gomer is a prostitute, and Hosea is a man of God. And God tells Hosea to marry a prostitute. Now, usually I'm all for God picking out people to marry, right? Because hey, God would probably pick out a good one, right? He thinks about me, looking at me, and like, hey, I got a good wife for you. And so he says to Hosea, hey, I got a wife for you. I'm thinking maybe this will work. I want you to marry Gomer. Hosea chapter 1. When the Lord first began speaking to Israel through Hosea, he said to him, go marry a prostitute. And I don't think you would have thought that God would ever say that. Go marry a prostitute so that some of her children will be conceived in prostitution. Oof. This will illustrate how Israel has acted like a prostitute by turning it against the Lord and worshiping other gods. So this relationship that we're going to learn about is a picture of what God deals with the nation of Israel, with his people, and how they prostitute themselves in going after other gods and love and finding and giving themselves over to that. So Hosea marries Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she became pregnant and gave Hosea a son. And the Lord said, name the child Jezreel, for I am about to punish King Jehu's dynasty to avenge the murders he committed at Jezreel. In fact, I'll bring an end to Israel's independence. So even God tells him to name his kid after a really horrible place. I suppose that when Hosea was looking at dating apps and he came across Gomer's profile, he would have just, nope, not going to. Especially if he read anything like, hey, what are your interests? What do you like to do? That kind of stuff. What's your job? And I don't know, but in fact, I don't think too many people would have picked Gomer. They would have picked her for a good time, but not for a wife. Hosea must have been confused. You want me to marry her? To have and to hold from this day forward, for sure, like that? It must have been complicated. But Hosea marries her. I don't know if there was a lot of people at the wedding. I don't know if there's a lot of celebration. I think there might have been a few gawkers showing up, gossipers showing up. Look who the man of God is marrying kind of people, like they're showing up. But Hosea is offering her something she's never had, at least for quite some time. Stability and safety. And even perhaps love. But soon she goes back to a life of prostitution. She trades all of that in for that. And she gets pregnant by the men who use her for sex. And she gives birth to these children and still expects Hosea to raise those kids. She keeps hurting him over and over again, leaving for a life. He knew what she was doing when she would leave and close the door. Maybe she could not love herself enough. Maybe Hosea's love even seemed to make things worse, pushing her farther away. No doubt she must have thought, Hosea will probably eventually just divorce me and leave me alone. And nobody would have blamed Hosea. Hosea 2 verse 7 says, when she runs after her lovers, she won't be able to catch them. She will search for them but not find them. Then she will think, I might as well return to my husband, for I was better off with him than I am now. That is what he is hoping. That is what Hosea is hoping for. He's kind of hoping that she'll just end up in a place where she goes, I'm just going to go home. And she's chasing after these lovers, and they don't want anything to do with her. They don't want to raise her children. They don't want to provide for her, a safe place for her to live. Here's some money, and I'm not in love with you. I'm not in love with you. Do you think that I'm in love with you? No. Did you notice that the dream was that maybe it says this, I was better off with him than I am now? That reminds me of the story that Jesus told in the New Testament about a man who had a couple of kids. And we know this story as the prodigal son. And there's a boy that leaves home, and he takes his daddy's money, and he goes off and does some wild living things. And for a while it was great. for a while he was having fun. And then his money runs out and the economy turns bad and he's in a terrible place. And he says, I had it better off at home. I'm just going to go home and not be a son, but be a servant. And that's what that boy does. But the father would have none of that. You came home. You're my child. So this is what Hosea is hoping for. But what happens in verse 14 says, then I will win her back once again. I'll lead her into the desert and speak tenderly to her there. Like, this is just crazy that he would think, well, I'll if she comes home, I will take her to the desert and speak lovingly to her as if nothing has ever happened. But by chapter 3 in the book of Hosea, it gets really bad. Gomer's left the safety and the security of this home. Hosea is all alone, and perhaps begging God to release him from this nightmare. God tells him this in verse 1 of chapter 3. Then the Lord said to me, go and love your wife again, even though she commits adultery with another lover. This will illustrate that the Lord still loves Israel, even though the people have turned to other gods and love to worship them. So I bought her back for 15 pieces of silver and 5 bushels of barley and measures of wine. And I said to her, you must live in my house for many days and stop your prostitution. During this time, you will have no sexual relations with anyone, not even me. So Gomer has left the house, and she's probably living with her pimp, the guy that helped, whatever. And she's not coming home. And so Hosea goes and finds her. And he has to buy her back from the pimp. The pimp is not letting her go unless there's a price to be paid. And he pays a price that's 15 pieces of silver, 5 bushels of barley, and a measure of wine. And what I discovered was that's the price that was paid for a servant. Like when you went to buy a slave, this is what you paid. So he pays a servant's price, and she comes home. This man of God trusts God enough to go after Gomer. Gomer did nothing to deserve this love and grace and forgiveness. And he finds her, and he pays for her. She is now going to be released from the master that owned her, restored to the one who loves her. I don't think moving forward this is going to be, oh, this is so great, this is lovely, yay. I think it would have been very difficult from here on out to be in good relationship and trying to figure out this stuff. And by the way, when we talk about this kind of love, this is not a love that says, hey, if you're married, your partner can do whatever they want and still be married to you. This is not that at all. That if there's just this, like, okay. But I do say to couples, when you stand before the pastor and you promise to love, care, comfort, defend, be faithful, promise to, you're going to be in here till the end, right? What that involves is I'm going to forgive that person no matter what they do. And oftentimes I get a blank look, like, what? Yeah, you're going to need to forgive him, and you're going to forgive her no matter what they do. Yeah, but what if they do? Like, what if they do? Because right now you don't think there's ever going to be a problem or a struggle or a sin issue until you find out. And then it's like, right, how do I forgive? And this is not a license to go out and see how much I can get away with and still be married. Like, this is not what, like, okay, you don't get to do that either. And that would be like me saying to God, hey, God, I'm just going to live this life, and you have to forgive me. And you have to deal with that, right? And I'm going to and that's why the Apostle Paul would say, shall we continue to sin that grace may abound? God forbid. Now, does God forgive me? Yes. And will God restore me? Yes. The message of Hosea and Gomer is that he will do that, and he will pay a price for me. We know that. John 3:16 tells us this. For this is how God loved the world. He gave his one and only Son so that everyone who believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. That God paid the price, the ultimate price, for me. Ransomed me, paid for me. That's what the cross is all about. That's what the grave is all about. That's what it costs for me to be in a relationship with God. And 1 John 1:9 says, we love each other because he loved us. So the challenge is for you and me is to, love must be sincere. The goal is for it to look like that. That the love of God so captures me that I'm going to love everybody else like that. And that's really hard. It's not easy. John 15:12, this is my commandment. Jesus said, love each other in the same way I've loved you. And so they're like, how did Jesus love me? And that picture got really clear after he comes back to life. It's a sacrificial love, an unconditional kind of love. I don't know if there's been a better picture of sincere love than Hosea and Gomer. It's a powerful love. Hosea raising children that were not his, different fathers, redeeming his wife from a sex slavery. What could be more sincere and fierce? The only love that's more fierce than that is God loving me. All the pain and the brokenness and the wandering, redeeming. It is a love that makes no sense. It's crazy at times. He doesn't ask you or me to understand his love. Just accept it. Come back home, he says. The challenge is to live a life where I love other people sincerely. I love them that way. It's a strange kind of love, but it is intoxicating. There's something about that that's so different and powerful and attractive. When we stand before God, it is by his grace and his love. That's the only way. So I'm going to ask you if you'd stand with me, and I'm going to pray. And then we got a song that we want to sing together. If you would join us in the song, that would be great. All right? God, we thank you so much for this moment in time in which we consider, well, your love for us. And at times it's overwhelming and a bit much. We might have even said, I don't know why you'd love me. And accepting that kind of love for some of us is a bit much. Until we realize you're sincere and that I have it better off with you. And what the world offers is kind of phony. What the world tells me about love, marriage, relationships, empty most of the time. So here we are today trying to figure out love from you and to others. Help us with that. In Christ I pray. Amen. All right, let's sing together.